What felt like rejection was actually protection, and that idea can be hard to accept at first because rejection often cuts deep. It makes you question your worth, your value, and even your identity. When someone walks away from you, ignores you, or treats you like you don't matter, it's natural to feel like you lost something important. But what you don't see in that moment is the hidden layer behind it all, the quiet protection that is working in your favor even when it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes the very thing you are grieving is the exact thing that was blocking your growth, your peace, and your purpose. Rejection has a way of redirecting your life. It pulls you away from paths that may look good on the surface, but are slowly draining you underneath. When you were in that toxic situation, you may have tried to hold on, to fix things, to prove your worth, or to make the connection work. You may have invested your time, your energy, and your emotions, believing that if you just gave a little more, things would change. But the truth is, some situations are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be left. And when you couldn't leave on your own, rejection stepped in as a form of divine intervention. It doesn't feel like protection when it first happens. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like a door slammed shut without warning. But protection doesn't always come in a way that feels comfortable. Sometimes it comes in a way that forces you out of what is familiar so you can step into what is right. If that person had stayed in your life, you might have continued to shrink yourself to keep the peace. You might have continued to accept less than you deserved because it felt easier than starting over. You might have stayed stuck in a cycle that was slowly taking away your confidence, your joy, and your sense of self. Rejection breaks that cycle. It creates a space where you are no longer tied to something that was hurting you. And in that space, even though it may feel empty at first, there is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to rebuild, to rediscover, and to reconnect with who you truly are, without the influence of someone who couldn't see your value. That space is where clarity begins to form. It is where you start to realize that what you thought you lost was not as perfect as you once believed. You begin to see the red flags you ignored, the patterns you tolerated, and the ways you compromised yourself just to keep someone else in your life. Protection also means that something better is being prepared for you, not just in terms of people, but in terms of your mindset, your standards, and your direction in life. When you go through rejection, you gain awareness. You learn what you will no longer accept. You become more intentional about who you allow into your life and how you allow them to treat you. That awareness is powerful because it changes the way you move forward. It ensures that you don't repeat the same patterns, and it helps you build healthier connections in the future. There is also a deeper level of trust that develops when you begin to see rejection as protection. You start to understand that not everything that leaves your life is a loss. Some things are removed because they don't align with where you are meant to go. And even if you don't understand it right away, there is a purpose behind that removal. It might be saving you from greater pain, from wasted time, or from a version of yourself that would have been stuck and unfulfilled. The challenge is learning to trust that process while you are still in the middle of it. It's easy to look back and connect the dots after everything has worked out. But when you are in the present moment, dealing with the emotions of rejection, it requires faith to believe that something good can come from it. It requires strength to resist the urge to go back to what is familiar, even if it was unhealthy. And it requires patience to allow things to unfold in their own time. Over time, the pain of rejection begins to transform. It doesn't disappear overnight, but it becomes lighter as you grow stronger. You start to see how that experience shaped you in ways that are actually beneficial. It taught you lessons you might not have learned otherwise. It pushed you to grow in areas where you were once comfortable. And it helped you build a deeper sense of self-worth that is not dependent on someone else's validation. Eventually, you reach a point where you no longer see that rejection as something that happened to you, but something that happened for you. You understand that it was not a sign of your inadequacy, but a sign that the situation was not right for you. You begin to feel gratitude for the very thing that once caused you pain, because you can now see how it protected you from a path that was not meant for you. And when you truly embrace that perspective, you stop fearing rejection. You stop chasing people or situations that don't align with your value. Instead, you trust that what is meant for you will stay, and what is not will leave, no matter how much you try to hold on. That trust brings a sense of peace that you didn't have before. It allows you to move forward with confidence, knowing that every closed door is guiding you toward the right one, even if you can't see it yet. Toxic relationships don't define you, they reveal you, and that truth can completely change how you see your past. When you're inside a toxic situation, it's easy to start believing that the way you're being treated is somehow a reflection of who you are. You begin to internalize the negativity, the criticism, the emotional ups and downs, and before you realize it, your identity starts to blur with the experience. You may feel like you're not enough, like you're too sensitive, too demanding, or too difficult to love. But that is not your truth. That is the distortion created by an unhealthy environment. What a toxic relationship actually does is expose parts of you that you may not have fully recognized before. It brings your emotional depth to the surface. It shows how much you are willing to care, how deeply you can invest in someone, and how strong your desire is to make things work even when it's difficult. These are not weaknesses. These are powerful qualities. The problem was never your ability to love. It was that your love was placed in a space that could not honor it. In that environment, your resilience begins to take shape. Every time you faced confusion and still tried to find clarity, every time you were hurt and still chose to respond with patience, every time you felt like giving up but continued to hold on, you were building strength. It may not have felt like strength at the time, but surviving something that constantly tested your emotional limits requires a level of endurance that not everyone develops. That resilience is now a part of you, and it didn't come from comfort, it came from challenge. Toxic experiences also reveal your boundaries, especially the ones that need to be strengthened. When you look back, you may notice the moments where you said yes when you wanted to say no, where you tolerated behavior that didn't sit right with you, or where you stayed silent to avoid conflict. These moments are not something to feel ashamed of. They are lessons. They show you where your limits were unclear and where you gave too much of yourself without receiving the same in return. Now that you see it, you have the power to change it. You can begin to set clearer boundaries, to speak up for yourself, and to protect your energy in ways you didn't before. Another thing that gets revealed is your self-worth. Not in how it was treated, but in how it survived. Even if you questioned yourself at times, even if you doubted your value because of how someone else behaved, there was still a part of you that knew something wasn't right. That inner voice, no matter how quiet it became, was always there reminding you that you deserved better. The fact that you can now reflect on the experience and recognize its toxicity means that your sense of self was never fully lost. It was just overshadowed for a while. These experiences also sharpen your awareness. You become more observant, more in tune with behavior patterns, and more conscious of how people make you feel. You learn to notice the difference between genuine care and manipulation, between consistency and unpredictability, between respect and control. This awareness is not something you gain from easy relationships. It comes from navigating difficult ones. And now that you have it, you are less likely to fall into the same patterns again, because you can recognize the signs earlier. There is also a transformation in how you view love and connection. Before, you may have believed that love required sacrifice to the point of losing yourself, that holding on through pain was a sign of loyalty, or that fixing someone else was part of the process. But now you begin to understand that real love does not require you to shrink, to suffer constantly, or to prove your worth. Real love is supportive, respectful, and balanced. That shift in understanding is one of the most valuable things you gain from a toxic experience, because it changes the standards you set for your future. It's important to realize that being in a toxic relationship does not make you weak. It means you were human. It means you hoped, you believed, and you tried. But more importantly, it means you learned, and those lessons are what shape a stronger, wiser version of you. They don't define you in a negative way, they refine you in a powerful way. When you stop seeing yourself through the lens of what you went through, you start to reclaim your identity. You begin to separate who you are from what happened to you. You are not the pain, the confusion, or the struggle. You are the person who moved through it, who grew from it, and who is now more aware because of it. That distinction is crucial because it allows you to move forward without carrying unnecessary shame or self-doubt. Over time, you start to appreciate the strength you gained. You recognize that you are more capable than you thought, more aware than you were before, and more intentional about your life moving forward. You don't just recover, you evolve. And that evolution is what prepares you for better experiences, healthier relationships, and a more grounded sense of self. In the end, the toxic relationship was not your identity, it was your teacher. It showed you who you are under pressure, what you need to work on, and what you truly deserve. And once you take those lessons and apply them, you step into a version of yourself that is no longer defined by what you tolerated, but by what you now choose. Separation is necessary for healing and rediscovering your authentic self, even though it often feels like one of the hardest things to accept. When you've been connected to someone for a long time, especially in a toxic relationship, your identity can slowly become entangled with theirs. Your thoughts begin to revolve around them, your emotions get tied to their behavior, and your sense of stability starts depending on their presence. So when that connection is broken, it doesn't just feel like losing a person, it feels like losing a part of yourself. But what you're actually losing is the version of yourself that was shaped under pressure, confusion, and emotional imbalance. Healing cannot fully begin while you are still in the same environment that caused the damage. If you stay in constant contact, or even mentally hold on to that person, you keep reopening wounds that are trying to close. Every interaction, every memory, every what-if thought becomes a reminder of the pain, and instead of moving forward, you remain stuck in a cycle. Separation breaks that cycle. It creates a boundary between you and the source of your hurt, giving your mind and your heart the space they need to process everything you've been through. At first, that space can feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. You may feel lonely, restless, or uncertain about what to do with yourself. The silence can feel loud because you're no longer distracted by the chaos that once filled your days. But that silence is not empty, it's meaningful. It is in that quiet space that you begin to hear yourself again. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions start to make more sense. You begin to reflect, not from a place of confusion, but from a place of awareness. Separation allows you to step back and see the situation for what it really was. When you are inside a toxic relationship, it's difficult to have a clear perspective because you are constantly reacting to what's happening. You are trying to manage emotions, fix problems, and maintain some sense of peace. But once you are outside of it, you gain distance, and with distance comes clarity. You start to recognize patterns that you didn't fully notice before. You see how certain behaviors affected you, how your boundaries were crossed, and how you adapted just to keep things going. This clarity is essential because it helps you understand what you need to change moving forward. More importantly, separation gives you the opportunity to reconnect with your authentic self, the version of you that existed before the toxicity took over. You begin to rediscover your interests, your passions, and your values. You remember what makes you feel alive, what brings you peace, and what truly matters to you. Instead of constantly focusing on someone else's needs or moods, you start focusing on your own well-being. That shift is powerful because it brings your attention back to where it always should have been, on yourself. During this time, you also start rebuilding your self-worth. In a toxic environment, your confidence may have been shaken. You may have doubted your decisions, your feelings, or even your reality. But as you spend time away from that influence, you begin to trust yourself again. You learn to listen to your instincts, to honor your emotions, and to validate your own experiences without needing someone else's approval. This process takes time, but it is one of the most important parts of healing because it strengthens your relationship with yourself. Separation also teaches you independence in a deeper way. It shows you that you are capable of standing on your own, of creating your own stability, and of finding peace within yourself rather than depending on someone else for it. You begin to build routines, habits, and a lifestyle that supports your growth. You start making decisions based on what is best for you, not what will keep someone else satisfied. This independence is not about isolation, it's about empowerment. It's about knowing that you are whole on your own. As you continue to move forward, you may still have moments where you feel tempted to go back, especially when memories of the good times surface. That's normal, but separation gives you the strength to pause and reflect before acting on those feelings. It reminds you why you left, what you went through, and how far you've come since then. It helps you choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. Over time, what once felt like loss begins to feel like freedom. You realize that the separation was not something that happened to hurt you. It was something that happened to help you. It gave you the chance to step out of a situation that was limiting you and into a space where you could grow. It allowed you to break patterns that no longer served you and to create a new path that aligns with who you truly are. In the end, separation is not just about letting go of a person. It's about letting go of the version of yourself that was shaped by that experience. It's about creating room for a stronger, clearer, and more authentic version of you to emerge. And once you fully step into that version of yourself, you begin to understand that the distance you once feared was actually the doorway to your healing, your growth, and your transformation. God uses pain as a tool for growth, not as a punishment. And this is one of the hardest truths to understand when you are in the middle of suffering. When you are going through emotional pain, betrayal, or confusion, it can feel personal, like life is against you, or like you are being singled out for hardship. It's natural to ask why something happened to you, especially when you tried your best, when you cared deeply, or when you genuinely wanted things to work. But pain is not always a sign that something is wrong with you. Often it is a sign that something is being formed within you. Growth rarely happens in comfort. When everything in life is easy, predictable, and smooth, there is little pressure to change. You stay in familiar patterns, you don't question your habits deeply, and you don't feel forced to evolve. But pain interrupts that comfort. It shakes your routine. It challenges your beliefs. It forces you to look at yourself, your choices, and your relationships in a way you may never have done before. And although that process feels uncomfortable, it is often where real transformation begins. When you go through emotional pain caused by a toxic relationship, it can feel like your world is breaking apart. You may feel betrayed, confused, or emotionally exhausted. But in that breaking, something important is happening underneath the surface. You are being pushed to see reality more clearly. You are being shown the difference between what you hoped for and what actually was. And in that realization, even though it hurts, there is growth. Because awareness is the first step toward change. God does not use pain to destroy you, but to develop you. Just like a seed has to break open in the soil before it can grow into something strong and visible, your life sometimes has to go through breaking moments before it can expand into something better. From the outside, that breaking looks like loss. But from a deeper perspective, it is preparation. It is the removal of things that cannot grow with you into the next phase of your life. Pain also strengthens your emotional foundation. Before going through hardship, you may not fully understand your limits, your boundaries, or your inner strength. But when you are tested, you discover parts of yourself that were hidden. You realize how much you can endure, how much you can survive, and how deeply you can reflect and learn from experience. These discoveries don't come from theory, they come from lived experience. And while the experience may be painful, the strength you gain from it becomes a permanent part of you. There is also a deep emotional reshaping that happens through pain. It changes the way you see people, relationships, and even yourself. You become more aware of red flags, more cautious with trust, and more intentional about your choices. You start to value peace more than chaos, consistency more than intensity, and respect more than attention. These shifts are not accidental, They are the result of lessons learned through experience. Pain refines your perspective so that you stop repeating patterns that were not serving you. Another important part of growth through pain is emotional maturity. When everything is easy, you might not develop the patience, understanding, or emotional control that comes from difficult experiences. But when you go through hardship and choose not to let it destroy you, you begin to grow in maturity. You learn how to pause before reacting, how to reflect before deciding, and how to detach from things that are harmful, even when your emotions are still attached. This kind of maturity is powerful because it helps you make better decisions in the future. It's also important to understand that pain can redirect your life. Sometimes you are so focused on a certain person, path, or expectation that you don't see other possibilities. But pain interrupts that focus and forces you to step back. It removes what was distracting you, even if it was something you thought you needed. And in that removal, new directions become visible. Opportunities you couldn't see before begin to appear. You start to realize that what you lost may have been keeping you from what you are truly meant for. Over time, as healing begins, you start to see the purpose behind the pain more clearly. What once felt like destruction begins to look like redirection. What once felt like confusion begins to turn into clarity. You may not fully understand everything right away, but gradually you see how each difficult moment played a role in shaping your strength, your awareness, and your direction. And eventually you reach a point where you no longer see the pain as something that ruined you, but something that rebuilt you. You realize that you are not the same person who went through it. You are stronger, more grounded, and more aware of your worth. And that transformation is not something that would have happened without going through what you did. So when you look back, you begin to understand that the pain was never meant to punish you. It was meant to prepare you. It was meant to remove what was limiting you and develop what was within you. And even though it may have broken your comfort, it ultimately built your character.